It's Monday, so we chat with J Leman about Illinois football. And Jay, these Monday chats have not been as good as they were last year. We saw warning signs about this team heading into this game at Purdue, but this was a disturbing loss for the program. So, as a former player, what concerns you most of all the issues we've seen?
Yeah, great question. We always go back to this, and I say, when I saw the Indiana game last year, I wasn't concerned because I saw how we dominated the line of scrimmage, running the football and stopping the run. And I think to be a great football team at any level, I'm talking from Pee Wee to the NFL, it starts. I don't care who your quarterback is. If you can run the ball and you can stop the run, you've got a chance. And if you look across the Big Ten Conference or any conference for that matter, for the most part, the top third can stop the run and run the ball. The middle third can do one or the other. The bottom third can do neither, right? And that's the issue that we're running into is we can never hang our hat on that, which has been a staple of Brett Bielema programs is, hey, we have not been able to run the ball. When you can't run the ball, you get in second and long, third and long. You start getting defenses that simply pin their ears back and start to isolate your weakest one or two offensive linemen, and you give up a bunch of sacks, you give up a bunch of pressures, and then in turn, you're going to turn the ball over in critical situations because the quarterback's under pressure. So you can see the cascade effect of all of those things happening, but it starts the line of scrimmage. If I can't stop the run and run the ball, I have no chance to be a great football team.
Jay, I thought my biggest takeaway from Brett Bielema after the game was he brought up how our offense still doesn't have an identity. So I followed up. I said, "You keep saying this. Like, so what how do you fix this? How do you address it?" And he said, "We're going to have some hard conversations with our offensive staff because the offense has taken a step backward in year two here under Barry Lundy Jr. So, what do you expect those conversations to be like, and what kind of changes do you expect Illinois should make on the offense?"
Well, first off, this is big boy football. This is Big Ten football. Everybody's getting paid big time salaries, and so these questions come with the territory. Number one, and then as the head coach, you're the guy that brought in both these coordinators or elevated one of the coordinators in Aaron Henry, and so it is your responsibility. And this is why you're paid the big bucks. But I think it's very obvious when you watch this offense play. Well, let's start with the offense. There is no separation anywhere from receivers or holes. We're not getting anything. You ever watch, like, I'll give an extreme example to prove a point. I'm watching the Ole Miss LSU game. There's guys open everywhere. You can say they're not playing any defense. You can say all that. Sure. You could say all of that. There's guys that there's just more space. It just seems like everything is so compact. Every yard we get is a struggle. We're not getting a lot of freebies here and there. The plays that are schemed up that are correct, whether it's the Boyer play down the goal line or whether it's the Pat Bryant pass that was dropped, maybe you catch both of those and that's a 11-point swing or 11-point swing a little bit, and you might feel a little bit better about the offense, but we simply haven't done that. And so I think you look at this scheme, and I think Brett's going to go back to, hey, how do I get the best 11 on the field? My tight ends seem to be playing better than most of my team right now. From a protection standpoint, from a catching the ball standpoint, do we need to run more 12, 13 personnel, 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends to get there? And we're going to run the football, and we're going to max protect, and we're going to get the ball out quicker. I know we want to have a vertical passing attack, but the vertical passing attack really does well when we have success on first and second down, right? Because then hey, maybe the team could run, you do a little play action, you go deep, you max protect. I think we need to mix in some of the RPO that we had that Barry Lane had at UTSA, was successful with that with Tommy DeVito. One thing that Tommy was good about, they might not have thrown the ball down the field, but they got the ball out quick. And I think that made the offensive line look a lot better sack-wise than maybe they possibly were. And I think Chase Brown, as well as a running back, erased some of the errors that maybe the offensive line had by making 1 or 2 guys miss. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, we're better than we are. And then we have guys that probably not as dynamic in the backfield, maybe stronger at the point of attack, maybe. And then we have longer forming pass routes. You have a little concoction right now that's led to a lot of pressure, not a lot of dynamic offense.
I'm glad you went there, Jay, because that was kind of my read. Because Brett said we know who we are and we know who we aren't. And Barry has this offense that if I think he has the talent, I think could be dynamic. But when you have an offensive line that doesn't protect all that well, you have a running game that's struggling to get going. You're getting in a lot of third and longs where you got to take these deeper shots. I thought 12, 13 personnel, more RPOs would make sense. So, I mean, that's got to be the change this week.
I think so. I think if I'm looking at and so you said, what is the identity? What does Brett go back to say to Barry Lunny? What he keeps saying the phrase too. I've got to reevaluate what we're asking these guys to do.
Yeah.
Right. That is the phrase I've heard multiple times. And currently we're asking them to protect for 3 or 4 seconds, and it doesn't seem like we're able to protect for 3 or 4 seconds. So if I have a litany of plays as an offensive coordinator that, are 3-4 second routes, maybe some double moves in there, here and there, some wheel routes, some running back out of the backfield or some throwbacks. All those are null and void if I can't protect, right? So I've got to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how do we have success on first and second down? Hey, how do we get Isaiah Williams the ball as much as we can, even in the run game, short passing game? Is he our edge threat on the run game, right? I mean, we had some success with that last year. Haven't seen it as much this year or be as successful with it this year. But I think you do that and you go to, hey, Luke Altmaier, we love what you're doing. We like that you're giving, effort and whatnot, but we've got to mix it up into let's run the RPO. They've had some success with Pat Bryant on the RPO. Bryant, probably his best route that he runs is that slant RPO, and he does make those catches contested. I will say Pat struggled with some hands issues, but he hasn't struggled on the RPO throw. And so I think we need to hit that up. I think Pat's a good blocker on the edge as well. I think that's part of the reason he's in there. And so I would like to see more running. I think, and to Wagner's point, on your post-game pod, the first drive of a lot of these games look really good.
Yeah.
The misdirection, and you'll see what Barry Lunny does. He oftentimes knows the defense is going to be very aggressive. So he'll throw in boots or counters or quarterback runs. And we see that. I'd like to see more of that throughout the game. But again, anytime I have any kind of counter, it is a slower progressing play because I have to fake one way or the other, which means I have to rely on the offensive line to actually hold up to let me do the counter. So I believe that's going to be what you're going to see.
You talked about the lack of separation, maybe the lack of explosiveness from certain running backs.
Sure.
Is it time to deal with the growing pains of Caden Fagan, Malik Elzy, Kanari Wilcher, and get some more of those guys on the field? We've seen it in drips and drabs here, Jay.
Yeah.
Do you expect to see more of it?
So I think Caden Fagan was the best running back on the field for Illinois. It sounded like Brett alluded to that, thought he ran with an attitude. I think he's going to see more reps. Unlike the offensive line, where Brett alluded to, I think we've got the best guys out there. I'm not sure we have another guy pressing for time. He says that. It's going to kind of read between the lines of what he says. I do think there are some guys behind the receivers that are pressing for time as far as production separation, other than Isaiah Williams. I think we got to give credit to Isaiah Williams. I mean, for what he's done in these 5 games, I don't know if he's still leading the Big Ten in receptions
and receiving yards.
Yeah. And receiving yards. He's truly a dynamic, to lead in an offense like Illinois, to lead the country in receptions. I mean, I'm not country, it's the conference in receptions. That's pretty impressive,
And Jay, what I think is interesting, a lot of them aren't those cheapos anymore. Those cheapos these are down the field, getting separation, hauling the ball in, running good routes. Like he's a full-blown wide receiver now.
He's the real deal, and he's really worked on his hands, and I give him a lot of credit. And he was going against the defense that knew how to stop him,
Mm-hmm.
That was recruited him and everything else. So I think he's a guy that is weapon. But the other guys, Pat Bryant, to me, early in the season, I thought he was pretty much untouchable, not number one, but right there with Isaiah as far as a receiver. But I don't think he's, as far as finishing plays with his hands and getting the separation we want. I think you're going to see Malik Elzy push for time. They're really high on Wilcher. We haven't seen him play that much for as high as they were in the spring on him. And, I like Hank Beatty. He's just got ball security issues. He got away with another fumble. Got away with another fumble this week, which should have been a touchdown for Ashton Hollis. Speaking of Ashton Hollis, here's a guy that keeps on showing up. As a young football player, my dad used to tell me, and I was too young for this. I think Simeon Rice's first year was 1992. He would come on the field, and he didn't start, but he would always make a splash. Like, he would always do something. I'm not saying Ashton Hollis we see him make a big catch. We see him block a punt. We see him be the guy. He should actually have a touchdown on that play. It was late in the game. They didn't review. He fumbled. He recovers. And then he seems to be at the right spot at the right time. And I think he's got some size that maybe we're looking for in that area. So I think you're going to see guys pressing, but I think you're also going to see receivers lose time because tight ends are going to be on the field. I think you're going to, and obviously in 12 personnel, you're going to have 2 receivers. 13, you're going to have 1 receiver. So they might lose time because as a position group, they're simply not playing strong enough. I don't think you can take Isaiah Williams off the field much. Maybe to give him a blow here and there after a punt return, but you got to keep him on the field as much as you can. I don't see them taking him off the field.
Jade, we're waiting. We haven't heard yet. We're recording this before Brett Bielema speaks. I don't know what Zy Chrysler's injury is. Josh Gesky off the field seemed to have an ankle injury of some kind, but Chrysler's looked pretty severe. Was carted off the field, or was at least on a cart coming off the field when we saw him. But what can be done about this offensive line right now? Is it just getting the tight ends to help them?
Yeah, so I don't think first of all, there's not a quick fix, okay, on the offensive line. I think Zy Chrysler's in there and Josh Gesky are in there because they've performed the best out of everybody that is in that group. So if there was somebody better, I think they would have gotten the chance by now. So it's of my opinion, I think we need to move Adams back to left guard. I think he's an excellent left guard. I think he's an average right tackle based on what I've seen. That's not a knock on him. That's just what I've seen as far as performance-based football. I think you solidify that left side, and you've got to find out, okay, on the right side, how can we bring a tight end, 2 tight ends over there that, a lot of times we're going to have, Tip over there or Boyer over there, or maybe even Griffin Moore, or whoever it may be, to help solidify that side. I think you bring Jordan Slaughter in at guard if Gesky can't go on the right side, and you've got to figure out what your right tackle situation is. I don't know what it is, and maybe the best thing for the team is Isaiah Adams, but I just think we need something we can depend on if we need a yard or two, and right now we don't have that anywhere.
Yeah, because I know there can be a lot of folks. Adams had a one-on-one that he whiffed, right?
Yeah.
But I thought he was a little better, actually, when I rewatched the film, Jay. But, yeah, he's kind of average at probably best at right tackle.
I don't think he's horrible.
No, but the interior was a problem.
Right.
The interior was a real problem against Purdue, picking up those stunts. So I kind of agree with you. Like, if Adams is great at left guard, maybe you got to think of making that move. But who right tackle is it Hunter Whitenack? I don't know. That's tough.
I don't know who it is, but we're getting, ever since we've seen the Penn State tape, so Penn State and Kansas for that matter, use a lot of movement up front against our offensive line. We've struggled with movement on our offensive line. And it's just what everybody's going to do. And there's some guys, Purdue's Scouton. He's the real deal. He's an NFL defensive lineman. It's not like these guys are not good, but we really, really struggle with movement. And I think one of the hardest things to do when you're in a new position, especially like tackle, is you've got to deal with a lot of movement. And like I said, I think Isaiah Adams has done admirable. I don't think he's a horrible tackle. I just think he's a much better guard. We have nothing to hang our hat on. I know there's no easy solutions right now, and our depth right now at that position is not great. And that's what Brett has even alluded to. We don't have a lot of guys at that position ready to play. And usually when building a program, and I know that people hate to say that we're still building, but it's obvious we are still building. The offensive line is usually the last thing to get built up to where you want it to be.
I want to take a minute and tell you about Home Field. They are a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis. They emphasize their commitment to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They feature a growing collection of over 150 plus colleges to choose from, including, of course, the University of Illinois. Home Field designs are super unique, guys, because they delve into the archives and history of each school, including Illinois, and they use unique logos and iconic moments to create thoughtfully designed apparel. So if you go to Homefield homefieldapparel.com, you can see the 80s Illini football helmet that so many like, Flying Illini logo, the Illinois basketball logo from the 2004-2005 Illini team. The script Illini is there. And you guys, these are the most comfortable shirts. And that's what I love about Home Field Apparel. You get the comfort, but you also get authenticity and nostalgia. So I'm telling you guys, give their site a look. It's not the typical Illinois gear you usually see. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com, where you can see their collection of colleges available. And guess what? Our listeners at Illini Inquirer get 15% off their first order with discount code Illini23. Again, 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com with discount code Illini23. So, as you go to Illinois football games, get ready for the Illinois basketball season, Home Field Apparel is the perfect apparel to get you ready for the upcoming season. So check them out at homefieldapparel.com. I'm very excited to announce a new partnership with Underdog Fantasy. We decided to partner with Underdog because it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Underdog Fantasy has a lot to offer, including their Pick'em game. In Pick'em, you pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. It's so easy to play. Just pick 2 to 5 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. You can more than 20 times your amount of money by going 5 for 5. They also have a Best Ball Mania. If you think you know football, you got to check this one out. This year's Best Ball Mania has $50 million in total prizes up for grabs, with the winner taking home $3 million. So sign up today with promo code Illini and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code Illini to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. You must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org.
All right, Jay, let's switch to the defense. I thought the difference in the defense was pretty stark, given that it's kind of the same scheme. What did Ryan Walters and Kevin Kane do that Aaron Henry, Brett Bielema did not do defensively?
Yeah, well, one thing I've always liked about Ryan Walters, this sounds simple, but he'll find some pressure point that really works, and he will be relentless on it. And he is not afraid to give up 3 or 4 big plays a game. I mean, you think about it. I mean, he could have given up the Pat Bryant play. They gave up the quarterback run. They've got burnt on it a little bit times, but I think they really exposed once they found, okay, where's the weak point, on the offensive line. And it seemed to be in the heart of the offensive line, mostly, in the interior. They just pounded that over and over. It was, I mean, if you looked at the amount of 5 and 6 man rushes that Purdue had, it was a pretty high ratio, I think, of what it was. And then they just said, we're just going to guard your guys in the back end, man to man, which is typical Ryan Walters. But Kane and Walters had much, much more aggression than I think Illinois and Aaron Henry did. It's almost like we've been relying on our front 4 or 5 to get pressure. And Keith at times does it. Johnny at times does it. We haven't got a lot of production out of our outside linebackers, although Seth Coleman, I thought, played hard and at times made some plays running after it, caused a fumble. We're just not getting that production. But as far as the difference, it was total aggression and finding the weak point and just going after that weak point over and over and over again. And I didn't see that from our defense. Particularly, especially in the third quarter. It's probably the worst quarter of defense I've seen us play in a long time.
I'm wondering where those outside linebackers are, Jay. Like they didn't play a lot. They went more towards the inside guys. You saw Kreutz and Odaluga come down as those dime pass rushers. They brought in an NFL guy to get more production out of them, but like they need Gabe Akis and Seth Coleman to be players, and I don't know if that's scheming them up or those guys just playing better. But they got to get those guys going.
Well, I think in general, you at least need a sack a game between those two.
Yeah.
So you think you're going to get 12 to 15 sacks a year out of those 2 guys, and I don't think that standard is too high at all.
One, I think this year.
I think Gabe had 1 in Penn State, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And so it's like we're not getting the production from that position that's needed. And that being said, I thought Dylan Rosiak, for all the linebackers, played well. I thought Kreutz flashed a little bit. I like Odaluga. He seems a little bit lost out there sometimes, to be honest. He's athletic. He makes some plays. I don't see our linebackers really knowing where to fit or pressing down into the gap. It seems like they're getting washed a lot. And when you're getting washed a lot, it means you're not necessarily not knowing where you're going, but you need to shuffle and attack the line of scrimmage. I don't see our linebackers attacking the line of scrimmage that we need to. They run a hard zone or hard zone left, and I can shuffle to stay in my gap, but at some point I've got to attack the line of scrimmage. Rosiak did that a couple times, and so I will give him credit. I mean, I think Rosiak has impressed me with his stoutness, despite his size. Has a lot of pop behind him. James Crute's athletic, obviously on that close to being a safety play. Odaluga's athletic. I just think he got away with two tackles that could have been big penalties. And added on. I like him. I just think that he's young. I didn't see a ton of Tariq Barnes on the field as much as we'd seen him. I mean, I didn't see him play as much. I don't know if he's banged up or not. But this is a guy who's a 5th or 6th year player, and thought that he was going to be a big linchpin. So there's a lot of issues that I'm seeing, but it starts with the defensive line. I don't think the outside backers have given us the production we've been looking for.
Jay, I thought the secondary really struggled. I mean, some of those one-on-one battles, but the penalties, the penalties from that group are killers. You had a bust. I thought the run support wasn't all that good. Man, it's just that defense. I thought the last 2 weeks have made progress. I thought they just took a big step.
Well, it almost felt to me like Graham Harrell said, okay, 2 out of 3 chance on a deep ball. We're either going to catch it or we're going to get a pass interference. That's what it felt like, especially when they were going after Taz and Toby. It felt like they knew if they threw any kind of back shoulder, there would be at least a chance for a penalty, right? Or they would catch it. And Deion Burks is a good player. They got some good, they've got some good players, but and speaking of separation, we don't got a guy right now that can get separation down the field like Burks can. I think Isaiah Williams can do it midfield. Although Isaiah, we know is much quicker side to side than he is a straight line guy. But we don't have a guy like Burks that can really stretch it right now. But it just felt like Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator for Purdue, was like, okay, let's throw it up on Toby. Let's throw it up on Taz. Let's test them out. We're either going to catch it or we're either going to get a pass interference. I mean, I think Hudson Card started 8 for 8 in the second half. I mean, it was just dicing.
Which one thing I noticed, Jay, watching the film is like, I'd like Altmaier needs to speed it up a little bit, but I don't think he trusts his wide receivers maybe to do that, because at some point, you got to go throw it up like in one-on-one battles, and it just feels like he's a little hesitant. I saw Hudson Card just total confidence in doing that.
Right. I mean, yeah, he has a lot of confidence in his guys, and I will say a lot of those guys have been playing in a similar pass-happy system for a while, where it was, hey, let's throw it out, Connell, 4th-round draft pick, for years. So they've been in that system and kind of throw it up and whatnot. It just seemed way more exciting, the Purdue offense. That's how it's, and that bothers me, right? It's like, and it bothers me that Purdue has 59,000 fans. They're 1-3 and they're excited about it, right? I mean, they're still excited. I mean, they have a quarterback and a receiver set. People just decide to call me all the time. Unfortunately, during this time, and I have my wife use my phone because I'm trying to. A little side note: I'm trying to set up a printer today because I don't even know how to do that. My wife sets up all my electronic stuff. She's with my phone and stuff. So sometimes you'll hear phones and whatnot.
Busy man.
Oh, I don't know why at 10 o'clock on Monday it's like, let's call. But let me get back to my point, which was these guys have been throwing the football all around, and Purdue just seems excited as a program. And I heard you mention, man, it seemed like they were in year 3 and we were in year 1. Remember, this is a first-year coach, first-year program, and we got beat by 25. I think that's so alarming for this program.
Yeah, let me go there. Brett Bielema talks about tough, smart, dependable. That's not happening. Sure. Penalties, turnovers, mental errors, not doing those things. Those are happening. This feels like a big moment. I don't want to be hyperbolic here, Jay, but this feels like a big moment for Brett Bielema and his program. How does he go about addressing it?
That's a great question. I had a chance to read in the paper that one of the athletes said that Brett mentioned in the locker room that in the next 5 days, we got to make more progress than any team in the country. That's slightly hyperbolic. And so he's taking it there, right? I'm saying like, okay, wait, we got to make more progress and we got to get there in a hurry. I don't think Brett in his career outside of Wisconsin 2021 has really lost a Big Ten game like that. Not many at Wisconsin. I know that. I mean, and here at Illinois hasn't felt like that. And I think that's the weird thing, is that we feel like we got accustomed to being in each game, and it's feeling like we're getting farther and farther away from that. We're kind of going the opposite direction. And so Brett's got to figure out something quick. First and foremost, you've got to stay in games offensively by not committing penalties, turnovers, and these negative plays on offense. Okay. We knew the defense was going to take a step back, but I think the question we're all asking ourselves, offensively, did Chase Brown really and Tommy DeVito really do that much? Because we didn't lose a ton of other guys. Palczewski was a big loss, I will say that. Okay. But defensively, were our defensive backs just so good that nobody could throw the ball anyway, and our defensive line was able to make a bunch of plays because nobody was ever open, and if they did throw it, it'd be picked? Maybe. I mean, these are the questions that are going in Illinois' heads, like Illinois fans' heads, like, what is going on? Because I thought this was an 8-win team 5 weeks ago when I looked at their thing. I don't know if they're a 4-win team right now. And that's right. Not the way they're playing. I mean, I would say that Northwestern could beat them right now. Shoot. Nebraska has a good rush defense and can run the ball. They got boat raced by Michigan, but Michigan's Michigan. And then Indiana, I think they would beat Indiana, but still, like, I have a question. Like, it's like 4 wins right now if they play like they played against Purdue.
All right. So kind of following up on that, how big of a talent problem does Illinois have right now?
That's a good question. I think that we thought we had bridged the talent gap because we had so many draft picks and last year, but the reality is we don't look as athletic as we need to look against some of these other teams. I think if you look at the Power 5 teams we played, they've looked drastically more athletic than us. Now, Penn State is going to look more athletic, but Kansas looked way more athletic than us. Way faster. Purdue looked way faster. And what I was interested about is outside of Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph, their defensive line looked more active and better than us, right? Which I never thought we would see that. And so their receivers obviously were more athletic than us, and then their offensive line, which is not supposed to be their strength, certainly played better than us, Purdue. So I'm looking at all these different things. So the question is talent-wise. Yes, I think we're behind on talent, so I do think that's an issue. I think we need to hit the transfer portal harder than what we did hit. I know we've had some success on the JUCO front. Obviously, hit the transfer portal for Altmaier and Harper and some other players. But we've done JUCO for some of the offensive linemen. We've had success there. We've got to get more help sooner rather than later, unless some of these freshmen, sophomores, which I feel good about a lot of the recruits, but they're obviously not good enough to step in right now and play, or they would be.
Yeah.
So I think that's a slow roll on the development. So I do think we need to upgrade our talent. If I'm just going over the Power 5 games we played, we certainly have had nearly as much. It didn't seem like we had as much talent as those other 3 teams.
Yeah. When
you outscored by 50-some points, 53 points or something like that in the last 3 Power 5 games. So not good.
Yeah. I think that bridge to their prep recruits, because you can see the length, the athleticism, some speed, they need to bridge that a little bit more, and they're really going to have to hit the trenches in the transfer portal. They've kind of gone with these kind of lower level guys. They got to get like former 4-star prospects.
I agree. I think to your point, there's a lot of length out there. Let's take Boyer for example. I mean, solid guy. He's going to be a good player for a long time in Illinois, right? I mean, he got the body type to block and whatnot. They do a good job of developing guys like that. They've even got some guys with some great frames in the offensive line. Right now, though, we go to the second defensive line. It's not a Big Ten second team defensive line right now. I think they're good guys. I think they've worked hard to develop those guys, but there's a huge drop off. And so we've got to do better up front there. I do think I do think long-term our defensive backs are at a talent level that are going to be good. I think Xavier Scott's going to be a good football player. I think Zach Toby's going to be a good football player. There's a reason, was it North Carolina or somebody he was recruited by? I think Sabor Kareem is going to be good. I think Matt Bailey, I mean, not a highly touted guy, but I think Matthew Bailey is going to be a good football player. He's not going to play the rest of the year, so that doesn't really help us. So I think on the defensive backside, we're going to be okay. I just am not sure up front where we're at right now. And every good, I would say, Mike White did it with JUCOs, right? To bridge the gap and try to make us better. I think now that's the transfer portal.
Yeah. Well, Jay, Illinois is a favorite against Nebraska. Opened as a 4-point favorite. Don't know if that's changed, but how do they get back on track and give themselves a chance to kind of rebound this season?
This is such an interesting game. I mean, Matt Rule this is really down to the studs rebuild here. You look at their offense, it's a simplistic offense. They do run the football a lot. They actually, until last week, were leading the Big Ten in rushing defense. A lot of people didn't know that. Now, they had played some pass-happy teams and Louisiana Tech and Colorado and whatnot. But they did play a Minnesota team, and they shut down Minnesota's run attack in week 1. So it's going to be a challenge to run the football. Offensively for Nebraska, they basically are running kind of old school 1990s a little bit. Nebraska, they have a little bit of option in there. They have a couple tailbacks. Nobody's too scary. Heinrich Harburger's kind of replaced Jeff Sims as the quarterback. And from what I've seen, he's good at running the football. They have a very limited pass game. A couple of dink and dunks to running backs, receivers, and tight ends, and that's about it. Now, they had to do that against Michigan because they couldn't do anything run-wise. But this is a very simple offense in my mind. This is where if Illinois gets run over by these guys or gets out-athleted by these guys, I'd be really scared because I look at the athleticism over there. They have some, but they're not dynamic right now on the offensive side of the football by any means. Now, defensively, I think they could give us some problems. I think their defensive line has played a lot better than most people think they've played. So, again, this is an Illinois game. This is a game that Illinois should win. Even Vegas thinks they should win, even despite that Purdue thing. But I don't even know. If they play like they did last week, they will not beat Nebraska. That third quarter was some of the worst ball I've seen in a long time. Garrett Miller running behind 4 defensive backs. I know there's missed assignments, but come on, guys. It's 3rd and 8, and we got a guy just running right by us. So, anyway, that's what I would say about Nebraska. This is a game we should win.
It's a big game for Illinois.
Huge game.
It's a big game for this program. I'm trying not to be hyperbolic, but given what we've seen through 5 games, and given that Maryland's ahead, Wisconsin's ahead, Iowa's ahead. Like, I know there's some winnable games, Jay, but based on how they're playing, there's not many of them. So they got to show something different.
Has got it going on in Maryland. I mean, you look at what they've done. They've always been able to score points, and I think Taulia. I personally think, although it's not a popular opinion among Big Ten media members, I think Taulia Tagovailoa's got the best arm in the Big Ten. I think it's better than JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, that's not crazy.
I think it's better than Drew Aller. I think he can really seem like they've got weapons all over the field. Caden Prather, Dyches, Jayshon Jones, who's been there seems like forever. But they've got weapons, and they're finally playing defense there, right? So they're playing defense. And then you look at Iowa. I mean, horrible stuff that happened to Cade McNamara, but they're going to be Iowa, right? And that was so Iowa how they won that football game, defense and special teams. And Wisconsin seems to be a little bit ahead of schedule. And I think if you're an Illinois fan, we have to talk to this because this runs into the psychology. We've watched this program for a long time. We are so tempered to get excited because we've seen this, right? We've seen this inconsistency of starting good and starting bad. And maybe we're a little bit ahead of schedule, caught lightning in a bottle last year, and maybe we're just farther behind than we thought. But I go back to our last 3 kind of rebuilds, last 2 rebuilds under Turner and Zook. Turner went to the MicronPC.com Bowl, had wins at Ohio State and Michigan in year 3. And that was a total ground-up rebuild. And we're talking 0-11 in 1997. We were a total ground-up rebuild in 2005, and we lost 63-3 to Penn State on national TV to 2 years later beating them, right? So in year 3, and so it's like, where are we at? You would think that in this era, we could build teams faster with a transfer portal. I don't know, though. I don't know if we're doing that right now. And I think that's I'm worried about it. Do I think Brett Bielema is the guy? Yes. Do I think he's a legitimate Big Ten Midwest coach that wants to be here long term? 100%. But I think based on what we've heard from him say in press conferences, and I can only go off what I hear him say, there's a legitimate level of concern about playing the way they played, and he knows he's got to get it right soon.
J Leman, you're the goods. We'll talk next week. We'll see if they give us something different to talk about.
Let's go. We got to get that W. Come on, Friday night.